The literary canon is made by readers, not by authors. And this might sound strange to us because in the West we have this hero worshiping mentality where we glorify the myth of the individual who, by his effort, his genius alone, is able to rise to the top, rise to success, to relevance in culture. And this is wrong, and it's kind of harmful towards both the artists and culture at large, because although it is not completely wrong, it is just a prerequisite. Being good is just a prerequisite in order to then have a place in culture. The rest of the work is a mix of circumstance and other people. Let's take, for example, Antonio Vivaldi. He was almost forgotten for 200 years until somebody discovered, almost by accident, his work in a chest and recognized the value it had and decided to look further into it. So we have this mix of circumstance, but of course of other people being able to recognize the work and praising it. And now it's almost inevitable to not have heard Vivaldi at one moment of your life. And even the term we use, the literary canon, was popularized by Harold Bloom, basically a professional reader. And we have so many examples of, in different directions, of this interplay between the artist and society and how they can recognize the value in each other, because this is like a meeting point between the reader and the writer, the recognition of value, right? And like, for example, Vincent van Gogh, a genius, worked all his life, toiled, and basically received no amount of recognition until he was almost about to die, maybe like some weeks before. And it was so surprising to him after laboring so much that he didn't even know how to react. Like he even felt like strange after, like struggling to make it. And there's so many more examples. We have Edgar Allan Poe, incredibly important to the development of literature in so many ways. He invented the detective genre. And he was popularized by Charles Baudelaire in his translations into French. And then, from the success that Baudelaire gave him in France, he started to be recognized in the United States. So we have this interplay that is not just enough to be good, There's a societal aspect that involves the recognition of value. And of course, they're not separate figures. We have Charles Baudelaire, who's a genius writer on his own right, but he's also like working as this kind of professional reader of discovering the value in others, and and having also this work, this additional work that is what builds eventually culture, that builds the canon. And another example, in haiku poetry in Japan, there is what is considered the four great, which is Basho, of course, then Issa, Buson, and Shiki. And it's very interesting because Buson wasn't read at all until Shiki, which is considered the father of modern haiku, basically discovered him and started praising him. And after Shiki, a poet of himself, a great poet himself, made his work, Buson became one of the four greats in Japan after having been basically forgotten. And another very interesting example, Rambo, Rimbaud is very interesting because he was also a genius, but because he didn't understand the societal aspect of art, he was so dejected by not being recognized as such at a great level that it was probably the reason that he became so dejected that he stopped writing at all. And probably he was the reason that nobody wanted to read him in the first place, because he had this attitude that he was a genius and behaved basically like an asshole with everybody. Everybody hated Rimbaud. He was a little shit. So it took like a new generation of people that didn't know Rimbaud and started reading him, and were able to recognize the value without, because Rimbaud basically made himself unwantable in all the artistic circles of France. So this is why it's very important to understand this dual labor, the societal labor that involves the creation of culture, of the role of art in culture, because it's not just about like being this genius. That's only the prerequisite. Whether it's Franz Kafka, whether it's like Emily Dickinson, it takes the work of actually understanding them, reading them, and learning to praise them that eventually makes them what they are today. Emily Dickinson by herself would have never made it. She never really made it. So it was the same thing with Franz Kafka. So we have to understand this, and I think it helps. It helps both artists, to recognize that that even if you're really good, that's not enough. Don't be a little shit like Rimbaud. Don't become bitter and just depressed, I guess. You have to learn to be able to work without regard of outcome. Everybody should really read the Bhagavad Gita, but then also understand this important aspect of that we should learn to praise and recognize value in others, and that this is an important aspect of the development of culture, And I think we should be aware that it's the interplay of both that eventually makes the societal aspect of art not just the genius of a single artist. So I think this is where I want to leave the video. I hope this was helpful, and thank you very much for listening or watching.